Well, now back to our top story. Key independents Rob Oakeshott and Tony Windsor have been locked in discussions with the government and the Greens in an attempt to reach agreement on the details of the government's proposed carbon tax. For their view on where that process is up to, they joined us a short time ago from our Parliament House studio. Tony Windsor and Rob Oakeshott, welcome to Lateline.
Thank you.
If I can start by getting a sense of what your electorates are telling you about a carbon tax, whether or not voters in your seat support a tax, and what message they're giving you about price and compensation. Rob Oakeshott?
There's certainly a lot of uncertainty and there's a want for information. I think most people are now across the line on the science. We have had the Climate Commission on the mid-north coast of New South Wales, for example. I think there is a want for more information in regard to science, and there is a growing reality that 149 out of 150 members of Parliament now have a policy response to the science, and so we're now, I think, at both a community level and a parliamentary level, looking for the most strategic and efficient way to deliver on that policy response. That's why people such as Tony and I have spent the weekend here trying to do that.
Do you believe, though, your electorate is, if they're across the line on the science, so they also across the line on a carbon tax as being the right response?
I think there's a want for information, and I think it's really a conversation that can't take place until we've got a final package. So there is a void of information, and there's a void for a reason, and that is, going back to the last Parliament, we tried 3 times to get a policy across the line and failed. This time there is an attempt to try and build some consensus within the Parliament between traditionally warring parties, the Labor Party, the Greens and some independents. We're doing that in good faith, and hopefully we can, at the end of this, reach an agreement that is right for the country and right as a response to the science, and as a consequence have a really good conversation with communities.
Tony Windsor, what is your electorate telling you?
Well, some concern in relation to the word tax. I think most people are across the line, as Rob suggested, in terms of climate change and being in the Murray-Darling system, which could suffer, and being an agriculturally based electorate, people are a little bit concerned if the climate scientists happen to be right, what's going to happen in terms of their climate. But I think Rob's right, there is a thirst for information. There's a need for a structure to be put around it, whether certain things are in or out, and how various industries and processing groups, etc., might be compensated or not compensated. So the reaction will be very much based on what they're reacting to, rather than the word tax or the other word that's been bandied about, the lie.
Well, of course, the Multi-Party Climate Change Committee, which you both sit on, has now had 7 months of negotiations and expert meetings and heard various bits of evidence. Rob Oakeshott, how close are you to reaching some sort of agreement on the key issues?
We've still got a bit of a way to go. I know there's a timetable government's working to. They want to clean this up by the end of June. We will be doing incredibly well to achieve that. That's an ambitious target. This is a complex area of science meets politics, meets economy, and there's a number of different things happening at a number of different layers. It's not just as simply as pick a price and go for it, as nice as that would be. So everyone's hopeful of end of June, but it will be incredibly ambitious if we get there.
Tony Windsor, do you agree? Could the timetable slip?
Well, it could, and there's a number of options on the table, and one is no tax at all. And until we get all the information, the Productivity Commission information, there's a range of international information to come in on implicit and explicit carbon prices, and a lot of that will be what I'll be basing a decision, not only in the way I participate within the committee, but how I'd respond to any legislation that happened to come up to the Parliament as well. So we've got a while to go on this, and I think we should do it. The weekend was very valuable, very constructive and instructive. And I think it's important that we actually try and get our heads around the way in which some sort of market mechanism could work, and within a global context.
You've talked about that global context in the Productivity Commission report, and indeed that's been your point ever since this process began, that you wanted to understand what the rest of the world is doing. Over the past 7 months, haven't you got a fairly good idea? Haven't you had some of your questions addressed? Do you not have a sense of what the rest of the world is doing?
I do, and there is significant movement in some parts of the world, but I think something like the Productivity Commission will shed some more light particularly on the implicit prices. There's a lot of policies around the world. There's something like 35 emissions trading schemes, so obviously the world's doing something, the magnitude of which has got to be sort of put into apples and apples. But then there's all these other policy mixes, like in the United States, for instance, where there is an implicit price, and that'll be difficult in some cases to work out. But that's the sort of thing that I want to get an idea on, because it not only relates to whether the world's doing something and we should be part of that global effort, it also has some impact on potential prices as well.
So you're not convinced at the moment,
related to the world.
You're not convinced that, from what you know so far, that the something the world is doing is enough for Australia to also be doing something?
Well, I want to receive all the information and then make a call on that. And it was me that actually called for the Productivity Commission just after the election was over, before a government was formed, that they actually been given the task of getting the information. So it'd be very foolish of me to actually jump the gun now and say that $1.32 is the price based on information I haven't even received.
Interesting number that you put there, and not one that really is being talked about, I guess. I mean, if we do look at price, Rob Oakeshott, business, if they argue for this at all, they're talking $10 a tonne. The Greens seem to favour $40. The government sitting somewhere between 20 and 30. Where are you?
I'm essentially on agreement. You know, I'm down to the pragmatic end of this process of trying to steer something that's really important for this country through this parliament in a way that hasn't been able to be achieved in previous parliaments 3 times over. So certainly want to get something that works and has a clear structure of delivery over over the long term, so that there is business certainty and predictability. But in the end, I'm less concerned about the front-end price and really focused on trying to get particularly the Labor Party and the Greens to reach agreement on something they've failed to do over particularly the last 5 years. So if we can achieve that, I'm not that fussed as to what the particular figure is.
Tony Windsor, what about you? I mean, of course, we do have reports like the Deloitte report, which says that you really need $40 a tonne if you're going to inspire a move to cleaner energy. Where do you sit on the pricing front?
Well, all of those things will have to come into play. But obviously, if you assume that a global context is that box is ticked, and I haven't ticked that box yet, but just assume for the sake of the argument that it is, I'm interested in doing something that actually does something, not something that does nothing. And so
from the get-go?
Yes, well, on a pathway at least. But it brings into play the relationship between a price that achieves something and what are loosely called complementary measures that may well assist. They might be slightly dearer than the price. I think everybody's agreed that pricing, other than Tony Abbott, of course, the pricing the problem is the way to go if you want to address the problem. But the complementary measures may also be important, and there may be some balance between the price driving part of the equation and complementary measures or incentives driving the other part.
But if you want to see something, a price that would drive change, can I put you in the $20 to $30 category?
Well, you're going to put me above the $1.32.
On the issue of, I guess, well, price goes to the heart of it, but after this weekend's meetings, Christine Milne, the Green senator, said, quote, "There's a long way to go before we get on the same page." How is this being divided up in the committee, the multi-party committee? Is it very much the Greens as a bloc versus the government as a bloc versus the independents, Rob Oakeshott, or is it something looser than that?
Oh, it's a lot looser than that. It's topic by topic, and, you know, I think everyone's at the table in good faith. Everyone is wanting an outcome and, you know, negotiating based on the merits of particular issues and, you know, what the various platforms that brought them to the table you know, as part of the consideration. So, you know, I don't think there's any particular blocks or factions in the meeting, if that's what you're asking.
Not even along party lines?
Well, it's issue by issue, but everyone is getting some really good information. And the point Tony made earlier about this weekend being really valuable, I think in the information sense, I think it demonstrated to many of the members, such as myself, how complex some of the issues facing government are. And, I think everyone in good faith is just trying to now pick a path through that responds to that and makes sure we future-proof the economy, as well as trying to provide a response to the environmental questions that have started all this.
Obviously, it is issue by issue, Tony Windsor, if you agree with Rob Oakeshott, but I wonder, let's pick an issue. Petrol, for you, out?
Well, we're currently debating that issue, and I'd rather not start to pick bits and pull bits apart, because it's the overall structure and how the combination of all the bits of the jigsaw actually work to achieve an objective of trying to get renewable energy on the front foot and global emissions down. So there are a whole range of structures that you can probably achieve that with, but I don't want to get into the particular matters that we're talking about.
Well, last time we spoke on this program, you said you didn't think that the carbon tax sales job was going very well. The government had put the cart before the horse, if you like. Of course, we still don't have a price, but do you think the sales campaign's got any better?
I think it's improved in recent weeks. I don't think it's been a terribly good one from the start in terms of the issue. And Tony Abbott's been very clever on this, going to the issue of tax, the simplified issue. This is a very complicated issue, and it's a complicated fix, but it's a serious issue about future generations. This isn't about our short-term political careers and who wins the next election. It's much bigger than that, and in a global context, if we can, in fact, see that the globe wants to do something, I think we're duty-bound as a population to actually do our bit. And I just wish that the debate hadn't been about tax and lie, and the reaction and the marketing was in that context as well from the government, that we'd actually got down to what the substantive debate's been about.
In the sales campaign and on that front, Rob Oakeshott, what about celebrity endorsements? Do you think they help or hinder?
I don't think they hinder, but I don't think anyone hangs their hat on them either. That everyone is a voter in Australia, rich or poor, celebrity or not. So if someone wants to contribute to a campaign and put their head on telly and spruik their message, they're free to do it. And, I think a few actresses are welcome in this debate, and other than the usual voices that we've heard over the last couple of months, which are on pretty clear, divided and lines, and more about the politics and the policy. So hopefully in this particular situation, the Kate Blanchetts and the Michael Catons will help a bit, but we'll just wait and see. And in the end, that's up to individuals to decide whether they want to hear a new voice or not.
We're almost out of time, but just finally a question to both of you. Of course, we're now, the timetable may slip, as you suggested, Rob Oakeshott, but of course we're just a month off when the government does want the details to be announced. Is it fair to say that at this point, while you are making progress, it is still possible that both of you could just walk away, Rob Oakeshott?
I think it's possible that everyone around the table could walk away, but I think there is good faith and a want to get an agreement around the table. So the desire is to get a result, but there's some really critical triggers that could see any number of options happen, and one of those is this all falls apart and we end up doing nothing. I hope that's not the case, and I hope I'm part of a parliament that actually can deliver something substantial, not only for the Mid-North Coast and New South Wales, but for Australia.
Tony Windsor?
Well, anything can happen in politics, and obviously even if there's some degree of agreement towards the end of the month as to a structure, then there's the legislative phase, and then there's a vote in the parliament, and different people can cross the floor. So just because we, in fact, do something or not, I don't think it'll stop the government from introducing what it would like to do, and there could be some interesting things happen on the floor of the parliament in relation to where people actually sit, or those who mightn't just get there for the vote.
Oh, interesting. You're suggesting that some from the other side of the House, the big other side of the House, the coalition, might walk across?
Well, I know there's some people very concerned about this issue for the reasons that I articulated earlier. They're looking forward 100 years, not 2. And what that does to people's consciences when it comes down to this issue, if we should act in a global context, anything could happen. And it's a big issue for people to wrestle with. It's bigger than any individual in the building.
Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for talking to us tonight, and I have no doubt that we will be speaking again before there's a resolution to this process. Many thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sally.